Linda sat at her desk, staring blankly at the glowing screen in front of her. The flickering cursor on the spreadsheet seemed to mock her as she tried to concentrate on yet another report. The office was quiet, save for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional tap of a keyboard. It was the end of another long day, another one of many in a life that had become predictably monotonous. At 47 years old, Linda had everything that society told her she should want: a steady job, a house in the suburbs, 2 children who had grown up and moved out, and a comfortable, predictable routine. She had worked hard to get to this point, following the well-worn path of career, family, and stability. But something inside her was stirring, something that had been buried for years but was now demanding attention. Is this it? She asked herself. Is this all there is? She glanced out the window. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the city. The view from her office wasn't anything spectacular, but it was enough to remind her that there was more to life than spreadsheets and deadlines. Linda had always dreamed of something different, something bigger, something more fulfilling. She had longed for adventure, for freedom, for a chance to experience the world beyond the confines of her office and her suburban neighborhood. But life had a way of getting in the way of dreams. There were bills to pay, responsibilities to meet, and people who depended on her. Her career had once been exciting, a fast-paced challenge that she thrived on. But now, every day felt like an endless loop, a cycle of tasks that never seemed to end. And the more she worked, the more she felt a growing emptiness inside. Linda's mind wandered back to her childhood, to the days when she had felt alive with possibility. She had always dreamed of traveling the world, seeing new places, meeting new people, learning about different cultures. But as the years went by, those dreams were set aside. She had gotten married young, had children, and settled into a life that was comfortable, yet predictable. She had always believed that happiness came from stability, from the security of a well-structured life. Yet, now, at 47, Linda couldn't ignore the nagging feeling deep within her. Something was missing. Her job, her home, even her relationships, none of it seemed to satisfy the longing she felt inside. The days passed by in a blur, and as each year added another layer of routine to her life, she began to wonder if it was too late to change, to live the life she had always imagined. What if I just left? The thought had crossed her mind before, fleeting and easily dismissed. But today, it lingered. It felt different this time. Linda stood up from her desk, walked to the window, and looked out at the city below. The world was so much bigger than this office, this life she had built. She could feel the pull of something else, a world full of possibility and adventure, waiting to be explored. Without warning, Linda made a decision. She would leave. The next morning, she woke early and began packing a small suitcase. It wasn't a grand plan. There were no detailed itineraries, no careful preparations. She didn't even know exactly where she was going. She just knew she couldn't stay any longer. She quit her job that afternoon. It felt terrifying, but also exhilarating. She felt free for the first time in years, like she was shedding a skin that no longer fit her. She sold most of her belongings, the furniture, the clothes, the knickknacks that had accumulated over the years, and put her house on the market. She had no clear plan, no destination in mind. But for the first time in a long while, Linda felt a sense of hope stirring inside her. She didn't know where the road would take her, but she knew one thing for sure: this was her moment to rediscover herself. That night, she booked a one-way ticket to Bali. It was a place she had always dreamed of visiting, an island filled with beauty, culture, and spirituality. It seemed like the perfect place to begin her journey of self-discovery. As Linda sat on the couch that evening, looking at her ticket to a new life, she smiled to herself. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful, something hers. For the first time in years, she felt alive. The next morning, Linda took one last look at her empty house. She had no idea what awaited her, but she knew it was time to leave the life she had known and step into the unknown. With a deep breath, she walked out the door and never looked back. Linda's flight to Bali was not just a journey to a new place, it was the first step toward reclaiming a life she had long forgotten. As the plane ascended, the tiny speck of her old life grew smaller and smaller, disappearing into the clouds, just like the fears and doubts that had held her back. She had no idea what to expect, only a deep, resonant sense that she was doing the right thing, even if it felt completely unfamiliar. When Linda arrived in Bali, the first thing that struck her was the air, warm, humid, and fragrant with the scent of frangipani flowers. The island seemed to pulse with a slow, rhythmic energy, and Linda found herself taking deeper breaths, savoring the sweetness in the air. The colors here were brighter, more vivid. The greens of the rice paddies seemed to stretch forever, and the ocean sparkled in a way that made her forget, for a moment, everything she had left behind. Her first few days in Ubud were filled with exploration and awe. Linda wandered through the town's winding streets, marveling at the ornate temples and statues that dotted the landscape. She was amazed by the friendliness of the locals. Bali had a unique charm, a blend of calm serenity and vibrant energy. The island's atmosphere felt alive, but at the same time, it invited deep reflection. Linda's first stop was the famous sacred monkey forest sanctuary. The monkeys here weren't the mischievous creatures she had seen in the zoos back home. These were wild animals, their energy raw and unpredictable. As Linda walked through the forest, she marveled at their playfulness, their lack of concern for human presence. They climbed trees with graceful ease, their movements fluid and natural. For the first time in a long while, Linda felt her own body relax. Her mind, which had always been racing with deadlines and responsibilities, was quiet. She could feel the stillness in the air, the call to slow down. She realized she had never given herself permission to simply be before. It was then that she met Dua, a local guide who had noticed Linda wandering aimlessly through the sanctuary. He was warm and welcoming, with a calm demeanor that seemed to match the peaceful energy of the place. "You look like you're searching for something," Dua said, as he offered her a seat beside him on a stone bench, shaded by the thick branches of a banyan tree. Linda smiled nervously, unsure of how to respond. "I suppose I am," she said softly, her eyes drifting to the monkeys in the distance. "I've spent my whole life working, and I'm not sure I remember what it is I'm really searching for anymore." Dua nodded as if he understood exactly what she meant. "Many come here searching for peace. But peace is not something you find outside, it's something you find within," he said. His words lingered in Linda's mind as she continued her days in Bali. She found herself seeking out moments of stillness, moments where she could simply sit and breathe, allowing the beauty around her to settle into her heart. She walked through rice paddies, where the endless rows of green stretched into the horizon. She visited the temples, each one more majestic than the last, their intricate carvings telling stories of gods and spirits that had been revered for centuries. She attended small ceremonies, where offerings were made to the gods, and learned the art of Balinese prayer. Each day felt like a gift, a step further into the unknown. But there was a struggle beneath the surface. Linda had always been a doer, a planner, a problem solver. Now, in Bali, there was no agenda. There was no work to do, no tasks to check off. The emptiness that had once felt suffocating now felt freeing, and Linda found herself at a crossroads. How could she simply exist without constantly striving for something? Could she truly embrace this way of life? On the third day, Dua invited Linda to a morning yoga class by the beach. "This is not just exercise," he explained, "it is a way of reconnecting with yourself. Your body knows how to heal if you give it the space to do so." Linda had never been one for yoga, had always thought of it as something too slow for her. But something about Dua's words stirred something deep inside her. She agreed, not knowing that this decision would be a turning point in her journey. The yoga class was held on a platform overlooking the vast ocean, the sounds of the waves crashing against the shore creating a soothing rhythm. The class was small, no more than a handful of people, all of whom seemed so comfortable in their own skin. Linda felt a sense of awkwardness at first, not knowing how to move her body in the way the instructor directed. Her muscles were stiff, her movements mechanical. She had spent so many years sitting at a desk, hunched over, that her body felt foreign to her. But as the class progressed, something unexpected began to happen. Linda began to soften. She stopped thinking about how she looked or how she was moving. She simply followed the breath, listened to her body, and allowed herself to flow with emotions. By the end of the class, she was sweating, her muscles sore, but there was a lightness within her. She felt both grounded and free, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. That night, as Linda lay in bed, the sounds of the island drifting through her open window, she thought back to her old life, her desk, the endless emails, the feeling of being stuck. In contrast, here, in Bali, she felt a sense of possibility she hadn't known in years. She was no longer running away from something, she was running toward something, toward the freedom to be herself, to feel alive again. The next morning, she woke early, as she had become accustomed to in the past few days. She walked out onto the balcony of her guest house, the sun rising over the mountains, casting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Linda took a deep breath and realized something important. She wasn't just traveling the world. She was traveling inward, rediscovering herself one step at a time. And that was only the beginning. After several weeks in Bali, Linda began to feel as though her soul had started to shed the layers of stress and tension that had once seemed so insurmountable. Each day brought new discoveries, whether it was the scent of frangipani flowers that filled the air in the mornings or the delicate sound of prayer bells ringing from the temples at dusk. But despite this peace, Linda knew there was still much more of the world she had yet to see. Her next destination was Thailand. She had read about Bangkok's electrifying energy, its bustling streets, and the contrasts of ancient temples standing side by side with modern skyscrapers. But it was the serene beauty of Chiang Mai that truly called to her. This city, nestled among the mountains in northern Thailand, felt like the perfect place to continue her journey inward. When Linda first stepped off the plane in Bangkok, she was immediately swept into a whirlwind of activity. The streets were alive with people, tuk-tuks weaving through traffic, and vendors selling everything from street food to souvenirs. The vibrant colors of the markets, the neon lights flashing across the skyline, and the ever-present hum of the city filled her senses. It was a far cry from the quiet, slow pace of Bali, and yet, Linda felt an undeniable excitement in the air. Bangkok, with all its chaos, was an adventure in itself. The first few days in Bangkok were spent exploring the temples, including the magnificent Wat Arun and Wat Phra Kew, where the Emerald Buddha sat in tranquil splendor. Linda was awestruck by the intricate details of the architecture and the stillness that seemed to hang in the air despite the bustling crowds. She took time to reflect in the shadow of these ancient buildings, absorbing the history, the spiritual energy, and the contrast of old and new that characterized the city. But it was in Chiang Mai, far from the bustling streets of Bangkok, that Linda truly began to find herself again. The flight was short, and soon Linda found herself surrounded by lush green hills and misty mountains. Chiang Mai had a calm, almost meditative atmosphere, with streets lined by coffee shops, small restaurants, and boutiques. Here, the pace of life was slower, the air cleaner, and the people seemed to move with a quiet ease. Linda's first stop in Chiang Mai was a local meditation center, a simple wooden structure nestled between towering trees. The center offered a retreat where people could experience the ancient practice of meditation, and Linda was eager to dive in. As she arrived, she was greeted by a monk named Somkai, who welcomed her with a warm smile and a gentle bow. "You are here for peace, yes?" he asked, his voice calm and full of warmth. Linda nodded, feeling both nervous and curious. The thought of spending an entire week in silence, focusing solely on her inner world, was daunting. She had always been someone who filled her life with noise, work, family, obligations, but here, in Chiang Mai, she felt it was time to sit in stillness. The first day of the retreat was filled with learning the basics, the principles of mindfulness, the breath-focus techniques, and how to sit with discomfort. Linda struggled at first. Her mind refused to quiet. She was bombarded with thoughts, memories of her old life, worries about her future, regrets about decisions she had made. Yet, with each breath, she felt herself grounding more deeply in the moment. The days passed in a slow blur of meditation sessions, group discussions, and personal reflection. Linda learned to let go of her expectations and judgments. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, she found herself getting better at simply observing her thoughts without reacting to them. One afternoon, during a particularly long meditation session, Linda began to feel a deep sense of stillness. The thoughts in her head began to fade, and she experienced a kind of peace that she hadn't known in years. For the first time since starting this journey, she felt as though she were connecting with something much deeper than herself. It wasn't a grand epiphany, but a quiet knowing that she was exactly where she needed to be. On the final day of the retreat, Somkai led the group in a ceremony where they offered their gratitude for the practice and the peace they had cultivated within. As Linda knelt, her hands pressed together in prayer, she reflected on how far she had come in such a short time. She had started this journey in search of freedom, but what she was really beginning to find was a sense of acceptance. Acceptance of herself, of her past, and of the path she was now walking. After the retreat, Linda spent the next few days exploring Chiang Mai. She visited the temples, walked through the night markets, and even tried her hand at traditional Thai cooking. She marveled at how the locals balanced their busy lives with their commitment to spiritual practice. The city felt alive with energy, but it was a peaceful, grounded energy, something Linda hadn't known she was missing until she arrived. During her time in Chiang Mai, she met a woman named Mai, a former corporate lawyer from the United States who had moved to Thailand to become a yoga instructor. Mai's story resonated with Linda's own. Mai had left behind the high-powered career and the stress of city life to seek balance and purpose. In the quiet of Chiang Mai, Mai had found herself and her calling. She encouraged Linda to take her time. There was no rush to return to a normal life. "Don't let fear dictate your path," Mai said one evening as they sat together, sipping herbal tea. "We're not meant to spend our whole lives in one place, confined by what society tells us is success. True success is when you're in alignment with your own soul, living authentically. You're on the right path, Linda." Her words stuck with Linda. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel what she had been denying for years, that it was okay to follow her own desires, even if they didn't fit the conventional mold. She didn't need to know exactly where she was headed, as long as she was listening to the whispers of her heart. Linda spent the next few weeks wandering through the surrounding mountains, hiking to remote villages, and finding solace in the natural beauty of northern Thailand. Every step felt like a step toward her true self, and with each day, Linda grew more comfortable with the unknown. She learned that it wasn't about having a clear plan or an exact destination. It was about trusting the journey and embracing the moments of uncertainty along the way. One morning, while sitting on the edge of a waterfall, Linda closed her eyes and listened to the sounds of the water cascading over the rocks below. The world was vast and full of possibilities, and for the first time, she realized she didn't need to have all the answers. She simply needed to keep moving forward, step by step. After a few months of traveling, Linda found herself standing at a crossroads. She had spent time in Bali and Thailand, slowly reconnecting with herself, discovering new practices like yoga and meditation, and embracing the stillness that had eluded her for so many years. Yet, despite the progress she had made, an inner turmoil lingered beneath the surface. Linda had come to travel to escape the rigid confines of her old life, but now she felt an unfamiliar and uncomfortable tension. She had thought that leaving her job, her home, and everything she knew would provide the answers she was seeking. But what she hadn't anticipated was how much more she would have to confront within herself. In Bali, Linda had experienced moments of pure peace, times when she felt truly connected to the world around her. But then, there were days when the emptiness crept back in. She would wake up in a beautiful new place, and yet, it would take all her strength to get out of bed. Sometimes, the quiet was suffocating. Without the distractions of work, responsibilities, and the familiar noise of her life back home, she was forced to face her own thoughts, the fears, the doubts, the regrets. Could she really keep living like this? Was it selfish to be out here, traveling the world while her children and family back home continued with their own lives? Her mind would often race, replaying the thoughts she had pushed aside for so many years. The guilt crept in. Had she made the right decision? Was it too late to go back? The world she had stepped away from was still there, waiting. Maybe it was time to return to something that felt more certain, more structured. But as she sat on a quiet balcony in Chiang Mai, gazing at the mist rising from the mountains in the distance, she realized how deeply these questions troubled her. The pull of her old life, the life she had left behind, was still strong, but it wasn't what she wanted anymore. She had already made the choice to walk away from that, to seek something more meaningful, something that would nurture her soul. But could she continue on this path? Could she continue without a clear idea of where she was headed? That afternoon, Linda sat in a small, dimly lit cafe in Chiang Mai. The air was cool, and the soft sound of the street music floated in from outside. She had just finished a bowl of noodles and was sipping hot tea, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in her mind. Her journal sat open on the table before her, a quiet invitation to put her feelings into words. She stared at the blank pages for a long time, unsure of how to start. She had never been one to express her feelings in writing, but something inside her urged her to try. Slowly, the words began to form. She wrote about the moments of peace she had found, and the overwhelming beauty of the places she had visited. She wrote about the people she had met, and how, with every encounter, she felt more connected to the world than ever before. But then, she wrote about the other side of her journey, the fear, the loneliness, the uncertainty. The pen moved faster now. She wrote about the pain she had left behind when she walked away from her old life, the guilt of leaving her children, the sadness of letting go of the familiar. She wrote about her struggle to reconcile her desire for freedom with her love for the family she had built. She felt torn between these two worlds, unsure of how to navigate the space between them. Just as she was about to close her journal, she heard a voice behind her. "Mind if I join you?" Linda turned to find Mai, the yoga instructor from Chiang Mai, standing there with a warm smile on her face. Mai had been her friend and confidant during her time in Chiang Mai, offering both wisdom and encouragement during the moments when Linda felt lost. "Of course," Linda said, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. Mai sat down and, without saying a word, poured herself a cup of tea. After a moment of silence, she glanced at Linda's journal, still open on the table. "Seems like you're doing a lot of thinking," Mai said gently. Linda hesitated, then closed the journal, taking a deep breath. I thought I was supposed to feel free, you know? But I feel lost. It's like there's this pull, this tug-of-war between the life I left behind and the one I'm trying to create. And I don't know which one is the right one." Mai nodded knowingly, her eyes soft with understanding. "I think it's natural to feel that way. We always carry parts of the past with us, even when we think we've left it behind. But what you're doing now, Linda, is learning how to embrace both sides of yourself. You're not running away from your past, you're creating space for something new to emerge." Linda stared at her, her mind slowly absorbing Mai's words. "But what if I'm not strong enough to keep going? What if I make the wrong choice?" "Choosing your own path is never easy," Mai replied. "It's okay to feel uncertain. It's okay to not have all the answers. But what matters is that you're choosing to live for yourself now. And that's powerful. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just take it one step at a time. The answers will come as you go." Linda sat back in her chair, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over her. Mai was right. She didn't need to have it all figured out today. She didn't need to know exactly where she was headed. What mattered was that she was choosing this journey, choosing herself, even in the moments of doubt and fear. Mai smiled at her. "The world is full of opportunities, Linda. Don't let the fear of the unknown stop you. Sometimes, the most beautiful things in life are the ones that we least expect." Linda nodded, a quiet sense of clarity starting to form in her mind. She didn't need to have everything under control. She could embrace the unknown and let it guide her, just as she had done with each new place she had visited. The conflict within her began to soften. She realized that her journey wasn't about finding a definitive answer. It was about embracing the process, the journey itself, the moments of discomfort, the times when she didn't know what was coming next. She didn't have to choose between her past and her future. She could honor both. The path ahead didn't have to be clear, it just had to be hers. That night, as Linda lay in bed, the sounds of the night filling the air, she let out a deep breath. She knew her journey was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face it head-on. After her conversation with Mai, Linda felt as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The quiet doubts that had been gnawing at her, about the choices she had made, the life she had left behind, began to soften. She was still uncertain of the future, but there was something profoundly liberating in letting go of the need for certainty. For the first time in months, she felt free to simply be, free to explore, free to create a life on her own terms. Linda decided to leave Chiang Mai for a few days and travel to a place that had been calling to her since she first arrived in Thailand, the island of Koh Samui. She had read about the beauty of the beaches, the tranquility of the tropical environment, and the opportunity to practice yoga by the ocean. The idea of slowing down even more, of having the space to truly reconnect with herself, felt like exactly what she needed. Arriving on Koh Samui, Linda was immediately struck by the island's peaceful energy. The turquoise water stretched out as far as the eye could see, and the lush green hills seemed to embrace the shoreline. The island was quieter than the bustle of Bangkok or Chiang Mai, yet it had an undeniable charm. Here, in the slow rhythms of island life, Linda found the perfect setting to reflect, to breathe, and to learn how to be present. Linda stayed at a small yoga retreat nestled among coconut trees. The retreat was intimate, with only a few guests at a time. It offered daily yoga classes, meditation sessions, and healthy meals, all designed to help its visitors reconnect with their bodies and minds. The retreat was peaceful, with a laid-back atmosphere that allowed for moments of reflection and stillness, but also for connection with the other guests who were all on similar journeys of self-discovery. The first morning after her arrival, Linda woke early to the sound of waves crashing softly against the shore. The air was warm and humid, carrying the scent of salt water and tropical flowers. She put on her yoga clothes and made her way to the beach for her first class of the day. The sand was cool beneath her feet, and the sky was still a deep shade of blue. As she settled onto her mat, she took a deep breath, grounding herself in the present moment. The yoga teacher, Ononya, was a calm, graceful woman in her mid-30s, with long dark hair and a quiet energy that seemed to put everyone at ease. She led the class with gentle instructions, focusing on deep breathing and stretching. The practice wasn't about pushing limits or striving for perfection. It was about allowing the body to move freely, without judgment, and about tuning into the body's needs. For the first time since she had arrived in Thailand, Linda felt a deep sense of peace as she moved through the poses. She wasn't concerned with how she looked or whether she was doing the postures correctly. She was simply allowing her body to flow with the movements, listening to the natural rhythm of her breath. She felt a connection to the earth beneath her, the sun above her, and the ocean in the distance. For those precious moments, she was completely present. The rest of the day was spent in a similar rhythm: gentle yoga practice, meditation sessions, and long walks along the beach. Linda had time to reflect on her journey, to check in with herself, and to ask questions that had been buried deep inside. The gentle pace of island life allowed her to truly hear her own voice again, without the distractions of her previous life. And with each passing day, Linda began to realize something powerful: she had the freedom to choose. She had always believed that choices were limited, that there was a right path she needed to follow. But here, on this island, she saw that her life was hers to create, in whatever way felt right for her. In the evenings, after dinner, the guests of the retreat would gather around a small bonfire on the beach. They shared stories of their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. Linda found herself opening up in ways she hadn't anticipated. She talked about her family, her past, and the fears that had once held her back. The others shared their own experiences, and Linda realized that she wasn't alone. Every person there had a unique journey, but they were all seeking the same thing: peace, freedom, and a deeper understanding of themselves. One evening, after a particularly powerful meditation session, Linda sat quietly by the fire, watching the flames flicker and dance. The warm light illuminated her face, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for this moment: the beauty of the fire, the sound of the waves, the gentle breeze in the air. She turned to Ononya, who was sitting beside her, quietly watching the fire too. "I've been thinking," Linda said softly, "about all the choices I've made. And how many of them were made out of fear: fear of what others would think, fear of failing, fear of not being good enough. But here, I'm learning that the only thing holding me back is myself. I've spent my whole life trying to live up to other people's expectations, but I don't think I even know what my own expectations are anymore." Ononya smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. It's easy to lose ourselves in the expectations of others. We get caught up in the idea of what we should do, who we should be, and we forget to ask ourselves what we truly want. It's a journey, Linda, and you're already on the right path. Linda let out a slow breath. "I want to keep going. I want to keep discovering what makes me feel alive. I don't know where I'm headed, but I don't need to have it all figured out anymore." Ononya nodded. "That's the beauty of it. The moment you stop trying to control everything, you open yourself up to the possibilities that life has to offer. And those possibilities will always lead you where you need to go." Linda smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. She realized that her journey was not about finding an end destination. It was about embracing the freedom to choose her path, day by day. She was no longer bound by the need for certainty or approval. She could trust herself to make decisions that felt right, to move with the flow of life, and to accept the unknown as part of the process. The next morning, as Linda stood on the beach, watching the sunrise over the ocean, she felt a deep sense of clarity. The world was vast, and there was so much to explore. But more importantly, she was ready to explore herself. She had found freedom, not in a place, but in the act of choosing. For the first time in a long while, Linda felt at home in her own skin. She was free to become whoever she wanted to be. And that was enough. After several weeks on Koh Samui, Linda began to feel a profound sense of peace and inner calm that she hadn't known in years. The pace of her life had slowed to a gentle rhythm, and she was starting to recognize the beauty in simply being rather than doing. But there was still something missing, something she couldn't quite put into words. Linda knew that while her journey had been about rediscovering herself, it had also been about discovering the world, the people, the cultures, the stories of others, and understanding how they lived, how they found meaning in their own lives. It was time to move on, to embrace a new chapter in her adventure. She decided to travel to Morocco, a place known for its vibrant markets, rich culture, and deep history. Morocco felt like a natural next step in her journey. It promised a fresh perspective, a new worldview, and a deeper understanding of herself through the lens of another culture. Linda arrived in Marrakesh, the city of colors, life, and history. The moment she stepped off the plane, She was hit by a wave of warmth and a cacophony of sounds: street vendors shouting, the call to prayer echoing from the mosques, the rhythmic beating of drums. The city felt alive, but in a different way than the bustling streets of Bangkok or the serene calm of Koh Samui. Marrakesh was a city that buzzed with energy, yet also held deep layers of tradition and spirituality. It was a place where the past and present collided, where ancient stories mingled with modern life. Her first few days were spent exploring the winding alleyways of the Medina, the old quarter of the city. The narrow streets were filled with vibrant markets, where everything from spices to textiles to handcrafted jewelry was sold. Linda wandered from shop to shop, amazed by the colors, the textures, the smells. It was like stepping into a living tapestry, each thread of the market telling a story of history, culture, and craftsmanship. One afternoon, she stumbled upon a small cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the Medina. The owner, a kind man named Jamal, invited her to sit and enjoy a cup of traditional Moroccan mint tea. As they spoke, Linda learned that Jamal had grown up in Marrakesh, in a family of artisans who had been working in the same market for generations. His family's craft was leatherwork, each piece carefully made by hand, from bags to shoes to belts. Jamal's pride in his heritage was evident as he spoke about the process of crafting leather, about the traditions that had been passed down to him. The art of leatherwork, he explained, is not just about making things. It's about honoring the past, preserving the knowledge of our ancestors, and passing it on. Every stitch, every detail, carries a story. Linda listened intently, fascinated by his words. She could sense the depth of respect Jamal had for his craft and for his cultural heritage. It made her think about her own journey, how much of it had been about searching for a new identity, a new way of living, without fully embracing the richness of the life she had left behind. She realized that she had been so focused on escaping her past that she hadn't yet understood the importance of carrying it with her, of honoring the experiences that had shaped her. That evening, Jamal took Linda to the souk, the bustling market, where the streets came alive with music and the scent of grilled meats and spices. As they wandered through the stalls, Linda observed the intricate patterns woven into the carpets, the vibrant colors of the ceramics, and the skill with which the artisans worked their craft. She saw people bargaining with the vendors, not in a rush but with a sense of rhythm and patience that Linda had never seen before. There was an art to the exchange, a respect for the process, a way of honoring the moment. It was about more than just buying and selling. It was about connecting, sharing, and understanding. The next few days in Marrakesh were a blur of sensory experiences. Linda visited the Jardin Majorel, a tranquil garden filled with exotic plants and vibrant blue architecture. She wandered through the Bahia Palace, marveling at the intricate tilework and the stunning courtyards. But it was the people she met along the way that left the deepest impression on her. One evening, she attended a traditional Moroccan dinner with a local family. The meal was held in a small, intimate courtyard, with soft lighting and the scent of grilled lamb wafting through the air. The family, a husband and wife with 3 children, welcomed Linda with open arms, sharing stories of their lives in Marrakesh. Over couscous, tagine, and fresh bread, they spoke about their values, family, tradition, and community. They talked about how important it was to live with gratitude, to honor the people in your life, and to respect the earth and the resources it provides. Linda was struck by the simplicity and depth of their lives. They didn't have much in the way of material wealth, but they had something far more valuable, a sense of connection to each other and to the world around them. The conversation turned to the topic of happiness, and Linda asked the woman, Amina, how she found joy in her life. Amina smiled softly, her eyes full of wisdom. Joy is not something you find outside of yourself, she said. It's within. It's in the way we care for each other, the way we live in harmony with nature, the way we find contentment in the little things. It's about being present, not chasing after things that will never fill us. Linda thought about Amina's words long after the meal was over. It seemed that everywhere she went, the people she met had a profound understanding of life, an understanding that was so simple, yet so deep. They lived with intention, with respect for tradition, for family, and for the earth. They didn't live in the future or dwell on the past, they lived fully in the present. The next day, Linda took a trip to the Atlas Mountains, a short drive from Marrakesh, where she spent the day with a Berber family. The Berbers, an indigenous group of people who have lived in North Africa for centuries, have a deep connection to the land and a culture that values hospitality, honor, and community. The family welcomed Linda into their home with open arms, offering her fresh mint tea and homemade bread. They told her stories of their ancestors, how they had lived in the mountains for generations, and how they had survived through hardships and challenges. The simplicity of their life, their closeness to nature, and their deep sense of community left Linda in awe. The family didn't have much, but they had each other. They had their traditions, their land, and their way of life, all of which were rooted in respect for the earth and for the people they loved. As Linda sat with the family, watching the sun set over the mountains, she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. She realized that her journey wasn't just about finding new places, it was about learning from the people she met, absorbing their wisdom, and embracing their way of life. Each culture, each story, each lesson was a piece of the puzzle that made up her own journey. Linda left Morocco with a deeper understanding of herself and the world. She had learned that freedom wasn't just about escaping the past, it was about embracing all of it, the good and the bad, and using that wisdom to create something new. She had learned that joy wasn't something to be pursued, it was something to be lived, moment by moment. And she had learned that every culture, every person, every encounter held something valuable, something that could help her understand her own path a little more clearly. Linda sat on the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley below, the vast expanse of Peru's sacred valley stretching before her. It was early morning, and the golden light of the rising sun painted the jagged peaks of the Andes in hues of pink and orange. The valley was quiet, save for the gentle rustling of the wind and the distant chirping of birds. Linda closed her eyes and breathed in the crisp, clean air. She had arrived in Peru with a sense of anticipation. Her time in Morocco had been a profound learning experience, but this felt like something even deeper. The sacred valley, steeped in ancient Inca history and surrounded by stunning mountains, was a place of spiritual significance, and Linda could feel its energy. She had come here to visit Machu Picchu, the ancient Incan citadel that had long been on her list of places to explore. But she had also come for something more, a deeper connection to herself, to the land, and to the indigenous wisdom that had survived for centuries. In the midst of all her travels, she realized that she wasn't just searching for new places. She was seeking a new way of being, a new way of relating to the world. Her guide, Juan, was a Quechua man, the descendant of the very people who had built Machu Picchu. He was in his late 40s, with weathered skin and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of generations. As they hiked through the mountains, Juan shared stories of the land, how the Incas had revered the mountains as sacred, believing them to be the dwelling places of the gods. The Inca civilization had understood the delicate balance between nature, the land, and the people. They had known how to live in harmony with the earth, honoring it as the source of life and sustenance. "Here, we don't take from the earth without giving back," Juan told Linda one afternoon as they paused by a small stream. "Everything is connected. The mountains, the rivers, the plants, the animals, and the people. We are all part of the same web. Our ancestors taught us that we must live with respect, always remembering that we are caretakers, not owners, of the earth." Linda listened intently. She had heard similar sentiments during her travels, but something about Juan's words resonated deeply with her. It wasn't just about what she could take from the world, it was about what she could give back. She had spent much of her life focused on achievement, success, and accumulation. Now, as she stood on the edge of these ancient mountains, she was beginning to understand that true fulfillment came from living in balance, not just with herself, but with the world around her. The next day, Linda and Juan began their trek to Machu Picchu. The journey was long, and the path was steep, but the scenery was breathtaking. As they ascended the mountainside, Linda could feel the energy of the land beneath her feet, and with every step, she felt more attuned to the earth. The air was thin, and the altitude made her lungs burn, but the beauty of the surroundings took her breath away in a different way. She had never seen anything like it before, the ancient terraces, the lush greenery, the distant snow-capped peaks that seemed to touch the sky. By the time they reached Machu Picchu, Linda felt a sense of awe that she had never experienced before. The citadel was perched high on the mountain, its stone structures weathered by centuries of wind and rain. As she stood there, gazing at the ruins, Linda realized that this place was more than just a historical site. It was a living testament to a way of life that had respected the earth, honored the sacred, and thrived in harmony with nature. As Linda explored the site, Juan explained the significance of the different buildings and the sacred rituals that had taken place there. He spoke of the Intihuatana stone, a ritual stone used by the Incas to measure the movements of the sun. It was believed to be a symbol of the connection between the people and the cosmos, a reminder of their place in the universe. Linda felt a deep sense of reverence as she stood near the stone, contemplating its meaning. Here, in this ancient place, she felt the weight of history, the wisdom of the ancestors, and the timelessness of the land. That evening, As the sun set behind the mountains, Linda and Juan sat in silence, watching the last rays of light fade from the sky. It was a moment of stillness, a moment of reflection. For the first time in a long time, Linda felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had spent so many years searching for something, answers, fulfillment, purpose, and now, in this sacred place, she realized that the journey wasn't about finding one singular answer. It was about embracing the process of discovery, of learning, and of living in harmony with the world around her. "I think I understand now," Linda said softly to Juan, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not about escaping or running away. It's about being present. It's about honoring where you come from and respecting the journey that has brought you here." Juan smiled, his eyes full of understanding. "Yes," he said, "you have found the truth. The journey is never just about the destination. It is about the path, the lessons you learn along the way, and the respect you show to all the people and places you encounter." As they sat there, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, Linda felt a profound sense of gratitude. She was no longer searching for destination. She was no longer looking for a final answer. The journey itself was enough. The people she had met, the experiences she had had, and the lessons she had learned. She had come to understand that she didn't need to have all the answers. What mattered was that she was living authentically, in alignment with her values, and honoring the earth and the people she encountered along the way. The next morning, as Linda left Machu Picchu and began her descent back into the valley, she felt a sense of renewal. The mountains, the ancient stones, the lessons from Juan and the people she had met, they had all become a part of her. She was no longer the woman who had walked away from her old life in search of something else. She was a woman who had embraced the journey, who had learned to live with intention and gratitude, and who understood that every step, every encounter, every moment was a part of the larger tapestry of life. Linda had found something much more meaningful than she had anticipated. She had found a new beginning, a way of living that honored the past, embraced the present, and welcomed the future with open arms. Linda arrived back at her small apartment in San Francisco after nearly a year of travel. The door clicked shut behind her with an almost nostalgic finality. She stood there for a moment, the weight of her suitcase in her hand, looking around at the familiar surroundings she had left behind all those months ago. The apartment felt different now, somehow smaller, as though her experiences had expanded her world and made this space seem less significant. Yet, it was hers, the place she had once called home. Now, it felt like a place to begin again. She sank down onto the couch, her mind racing with the memories of the places, the people, and the lessons that had filled her year away. Bali's gentle rhythm, Chiang Mai's spiritual serenity, Morocco's vibrant markets, and Peru's sacred mountains, each chapter of her journey had carved a piece of her heart and soul. Linda had always been in search of something beyond her day-to-day existence, but she had found so much more than she ever imagined. She had found herself. The truth was, Linda hadn't just been running away from her old life. She had been searching for a new one. One that was authentic, aligned with her values, and driven by purpose rather than obligation. And now, standing at the threshold of her old world, she was ready to step into the new one she had created for herself. The first few days back in San Francisco were filled with small tasks, unpacking, sorting through the mail that had accumulated, checking in with friends and family. There was an odd sense of comfort in the familiarity, but also a strange sense of disconnection. She'd seen and experienced so much of the world that the life she had left behind now felt distant, almost foreign. Yet, she had also realized something profound. She was no longer the person she had been when she left. She had grown, transformed, and learned too much to go back to her old way of living. Linda had spent months running away from the routines and responsibilities that had once felt so confining, but now she understood that the key wasn't to escape them, it was to reshape them. The challenge wasn't to abandon her life, it was to reintegrate the lessons she had learned into her everyday existence. Her phone buzzed, snapping her from her thoughts. It was a message from her daughter, Sarah. "Mom, I've been meaning to call. I miss you. Can we catch up soon?" Linda smiled as she read the message. It had been hard to be away from her children, but she had kept in touch regularly. Sarah had been supportive of Linda's journey, though she had missed her mother's presence. It was time to reconnect, to rebuild the bond they had and to show Sarah the transformation Linda had undergone. Linda called her daughter, and as the phone rang, she felt the familiar rush of love and connection. Sarah's voice came through the line, warm and full of energy. "Hi, Mom. I'm so glad you're back. How was everything?" Linda could hear the excitement in her voice, and it made her smile. It was incredible, Sarah. Life-changing. I've learned so much. I think you'll be surprised by how much I've changed. Sarah laughed. I'm sure I will. You were always so caught up in work before. I can't wait to hear everything. There was a brief pause before Sarah added, How are you feeling now that you're back? Linda thought for a moment before answering. Honestly, I'm a little overwhelmed. It feels like I'm walking into a new life, but I'm also carrying everything I've learned with me. It's like the world feels bigger, and yet, I'm back here, trying to figure out how to fit into this life again. Well, take it slow, Sarah said reassuringly. You've done the hardest part already, finding yourself. You'll figure the rest out. Linda nodded, even though Sarah couldn't see her. I think I've already figured out one thing, she said quietly. I've learned that happiness and fulfillment don't come from a place or a job. They come from how you live your life, how present you are, and how much you give back. I don't want to go back to the old way of doing things. I want to live in a way that feels true to me. That's amazing, Mom, Sarah replied, her voice full of admiration. I'm so proud of you. You've always been the one to take care of everyone else, but now you're doing what you need for yourself. I think that's beautiful. Linda felt a lump in her throat at her daughter's words. Thank you, sweetheart. I hope I can show you how important it is to take care of yourself, to listen to your heart. They talked for a while longer, catching up on each other's lives, and Linda hung up feeling lighter. The conversation had grounded her in the reality of what she was coming back to, her family, her roots, the life she had built. But she now understood that while those connections were important, they had to come from a place of strength and authenticity. She could no longer live for other people's expectations. She had to live for herself. Over the next few weeks, Linda started to integrate what she had learned into her daily life. She began to create a new routine that supported her well-being, including daily meditation, yoga, and time for creative expression. She took up painting, something she had always wanted to try but had never made time for. She also made it a point to connect with friends and family, to nurture those relationships with a new sense of presence and understanding. But it wasn't just about the external changes. It was about the internal transformation she had undergone. Linda no longer felt the weight of the world's expectations on her shoulders. She had let go of the need to please others, to live up to a set of standards that weren't hers to begin with. She was learning to live on her own terms. One afternoon, Linda found herself sitting at her kitchen table, journaling. She wrote about her travels, the lessons she had learned, and the gratitude she felt for every step of her journey. She wrote about the people she had met, their wisdom, their kindness, and how each encounter had shaped her. She had learned that every person, every place, and every experience had something to offer. As she closed her journal, Linda felt a deep sense of peace. She was no longer running away. She had come home, yes, but it was a different home. It was a home within herself, a place where she could be authentic, where she could honor her past and embrace her future with open arms. She had built a new life, one that was filled with purpose, joy, and the freedom to be herself. Linda stood up from the table, walked over to the window, and gazed out at the city below. It was a familiar sight, but for the first time in a long time, it felt new. The world outside was vast, full of possibilities, and she was ready to face it, one step at a time. And as the sun set on another day, Linda smiled, knowing that the real journey had just begun.